Welcome to the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit Breakout Session. My name is Moon So-ri, the Master of Ceremony for today's session. Organized by the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport and Korea Agency for Infrastructure Technology Advancement, the City Thematic Session will be held under the theme of Partnerships for Smart and Resilient Green Cities. This session will discuss the role of smart cities in green recovery, carbon neutral society, and climate crisis response, and the establishment of public-private partnerships regarding it. For this debate, we'll invite officials from home and abroad who have expertise in cities, transportation, platforms, and green architecture to hold the discussion. Through the City Thematic Session, we hope to enhance the home and foreign awareness on the importance of public-private cooperation partnership related to sustainable city development. And through sharing related to foreign cases, we expect it to be a great opportunity to search for the development direction of domestic carbon neutral cities. All online participants who are not able to personally come and had to join us online due to the COVID-19, there will be an online event as well, where we will be giving out small prizes amidst this session. So please join us at the very end of today's program. Then now, everyone, we'll start the City Thematic Session of the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit. Republic of Korea, the hosting country of the P4G Summit, and the Minister of Denmark shall open its doors with a keynote presentation. Both of our distinguished guests will present the future directions to reduce carbon technologies and strong partnership. So now let's first listen to a keynote presentation by His Excellency No Hyung-woo, the Minister of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Republic of Korea, on innovative urban responding to climate crisis and realizing carbon neutralization.
여러분 반갑습니다. 대한민국 국토교통부 장관 노형국입니다. 먼저 국경과 시차를 뛰어넘어 P4G 서울 정상회의 도시 세션에 함께해 주신 모든 분들께 깊은 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 오늘의 이 자리는 우리와 미래 세대를 지속 가능한 성장과 번영의 길로 이끄는 하나의 강력한 모멘텀으로 기억될 것입니다. 이처럼 뜻깊은 자리에서 기조연설을 하게 되어 무척이나 영광스럽고 막중한 책임감도 함께 느낍니다. 저는 오늘 도시에 관한 이야기를 하려고 합니다. 제가 있는 이곳 대한민국 서울에 국한된 이야기가 아닙니다. 세계 어디든 도시라 불리는 모든 곳, 우리가 생활하고 일하고 휴식을 취하는 삶의 공간에 대한 이야기입니다. 유엔은 2050년이면 세계 인구 10명 중 7명이 도시에 살 것으로 내다봤습니다. 실제로 세계 도시 인구는 1990년 23억 명에서 2020년에 44억 명으로 불과 30년 사이에 2배 가까이 증가했습니다. 도시는 이제 인류의 가장 보편적인 거주 지역으로 대부분의 사람들이 살아가는 삶의 터전입니다. 그렇다면 미래의 도시는 어떤 모습일까요? 2014년에 개봉했던 영화 크리스토퍼 노lan 감독의 인터스텔라를 보면 지구가 아닌 다른 행성에 새로운 도시, 새로운 삶의 터전이 세워집니다. 그곳은 깨끗하고 풍요로운 공간입니다. 인류의 지속 가능성을 상징하는 공간이기도 합니다. 그렇지만 저는 미래의 그 어느 날에도 지구가 아닌 그 어느 곳에도 이러한 도시가 세워지는 것을 바라지는 않습니다. 그 공간은 인류의 잘못으로 인한 환경 파괴 등으로 수천 년을 살아온 삶의 터전이 붕괴한 데 따른 어쩔 수 없는 대안이었기 때문입니다. 삶의 터전을 지키는 일은 생존과 직결되는 일입니다. 지금까지 우리가 살아온 이곳 하나뿐인 지구에서 모두 함께 더 잘 살아가기 위한 방법을 찾는 것, 제가 오늘 말씀드릴 도시 이야기의 주제입니다. 인류가 처음으로 불을 사용한 이후 인류의 역사와 문명의 발전에는 항상 에너지가 함께 있었습니다. 에너지의 소비는 성장이라고 하는 달콤함을 주었지만 그 이면에는 홍수, 폭염, 혹한 등의 기후위기와 생물종의 멸종, 물의 오염과 같은 환경 파괴라는 어두운 그늘도 함께 드리워졌습니다. 그 위기의 중심에는 에너지 소비에 따른 막대한 양의 탄소 배출이 있습니다. 그리고 우리는 전 세계 이산화탄소 배출의 70% 이상이 도시에서 발생하고 있다는 점에 주목해야 합니다. 도시의 무계획적인 팽창, 도로를 가득 채운 내연기관 자동차, 빈약한 생태 네트워크, 화력발전으로 공급되는 에너지원, 연중 멈추지 않는 에어컨과 난방 시스템, 그리고 불이 꺼지지 않는 건물들까지 우리의 도시는 쉴 틈 없이 탄소를 만들어내는 하나의 거대한 공장과도 같습니다. 우리가 편리한 삶을 위해 해온 행동들이 이제는 우리가 살아갈 수 없는 환경을 만들고 있습니다. 도시가 문제이기 때문에 도시가 변해야 합니다. 그동안 국제사회는 탄소 배출 문제 해결을 위해 공동의 노력을 이어왔습니다. 2016년 발효된 파리 협정을 시작으로 UN 기후정상회의를 거치며 2050 탄소 중립은 이제 인류의 미래를 위한 글로벌 핵심 의제가 되었습니다. 그리고 그 실현을 위해 세계의 많은 도시가 움직이고 있습니다. 그 시작이 탄소 중립도시 선언입니다. 탄소 중립도시란 탄소의 배출량은 줄이고 흡수량은 늘려서 순 배출이 제로가 되는 도시를 말합니다. 기후위기에 대응하기 위한 전 세계의 121개 국가가 탄소 중립을 선언했습니다. 2025년 세계 최초의 탄소 중립 도시를 목표로 하는 코펜하겐을 비롯해서 많은 도시들이 국제사회와의 연대를 통해 기후행동에 적극적으로 동참하고 있습니다. 대한민국도 문재인 대통령께서 탄소 중립을 국가적인 과제로 천명하셨고 탄소 중립과 경제성장, 삶의 질 향상을 동시에 달성하는 탄소 중립 비전을 마련했습니다. 그리고 이 비전 실현을 위해 전국 17개의 광역자치단체, 63개의 기초자치단체가 실천연대를 발족하여 탄소 중립 행동을 이어가고 있습니다. 그렇지만 탄소 중립은 쉽지 않은 과제라는 것을 모두가 잘 알고 있습니다. 그럼에도 피할 수 없는 과제입니다. 우리에게 나중이라는 여유가 없습니다. 지구를 살리고 나와 이웃, 우리 아이들의 삶을 위한 혁신적인 변화와 실천이 지금 당장 필요한 이유입니다. 혁신적인 변화는 도시의 기능, 교통, 기반 시설을 재정비하여 탄소 배출에 대한 통제와 최소화가 가능하도록 하는 새로운 플랫폼을 필요로 합니다. 우리는 그 역할을 스마트 시티에서 찾을 수 있었습니다. 스마트 시티는 단순한 디지털 기반 사회를 말하지는 않습니다. 스마트 시티는 혁신과 새로운 해법이 이루어지는 공간이면서 네트워크를 통해 도시와 시민의 상호작용이 가능한 공간입니다. 저는 탄소 중립도시 실현을 위한 스마트 시티의 가능성을 크게 세 가지 측면에서 찾을 수 있었습니다. 첫째로 스마트 시티는 도시구조 혁신 도시입니다. 우리는 출퇴근을 위해 그리고 주말에는 여가 활동을 위해 이동을 합니다. 하지만 우리를 기다리는 것은 극심한 정체입니다. 공연히 길을 위해서 낭비하는 시간이 많아지고 이는 불필요한 에너지 소비로 이어집니다. 스마트 시티는 컴팩트한 공간 구조로 이 문제를 해결해 나갑니다. 컴팩트한 공간 구조는 동선을 최소화하는 구조입니다. 삶의 터, 쉼터, 일터가 가까이 모여 있다고 상상을 해 보십시오. 그만큼 자동차 이용과 이동을 최소화할 수 있습니다. 또한 걸어서 10분이면 갈 수 있는 거리에 생활 녹지 공간을 조성하는 것은 쉼터임과 동시에 도심 내 탄소 흡수원의 역할을 할 수 있습니다. 이러한 컴팩트한 공간 구조는 도심의 분산 효과로 이어져 하나의 도심으로 몰릴 때 발생하던 불필요한 에너지 소비와 낭비를 줄일 수 있습니다. 둘째로 스마트 시티는 모빌리티 혁신 도시입니다. 스마트 시티 교통 체계의 핵심은 자동차가 편한 도시가 아니라 사람이 편한 도시입니다. 그 중심에는 친환경 모빌리티가 있습니다. 먼저 대중교통의 에너지원을 친환경으로 바꾸고 BRT, 트램 등 대중교통수단의 다양화, 고급화를 통해 시민과 대중교통은 더 가까워질 수 있습니다. 또한 개인에게는 친환경 자동차 구입 시 지급하는 혜택뿐만 아니라 집과 직장 근처에 충전 인프라를 확충하여 친환경차 운행에 불편함이 없도록 해야 합니다. 이는 내연기관 자동차에서 친환경 모빌리티로의 자연스러운 전환을 이끄는 밑거름이 될 것입니다. 그리고 무엇보다 자전거길, 보행길 조성 등 사람 길을 늘리는 노력이 함께할 때 도시교통이 유발하는 탄소 배출 문제를 해결해 나갈 수 있습니다. 셋째로 스마트 시티는 디지털 혁신 도시입니다. 디지털 전환은 스마트 정보통신 기술을 기반으로 도시의 모든 인프라와의 지능적인 연결을 통해서 에너지의 효율적인 운행을 가능하게 합니다. 에너지, 물과 같은 소중한 자원들이 어디에서 낭비되고 있는지, 불필요하게 소모되고 있는지를 관리해 나갈 수가 있습니다. 또한 도시에서 발생하는 폐기물을 복합적으로 처리하여 에너지로 재활용하는 도시 순환 자원 기술, 신재생 에너지를 자체 생산하여 에너지 자립률을 높이는 제로 에너지 건축물 조성까지 모두 스마트 정보통신 기반 위에서 실현될 수 있습니다. 그렇지만 우리가 잊지 말아야 할 것이 있습니다. 기술만으로 만들어내는 미래는 없습니다. 도시구조의 혁신, 모빌리티 혁신, 그리고 디지털 혁신까지 탄소 중립도시로 나아가기 위한 스마트 시티의 중심에는 언제나 사람이 있어야 합니다. 사람의 생각이 담겨야 하고 참여가 있어야 합니다. 우리는 지금도 하루하루 미래 세대의 빚을 지고 있습니다. 주저함과 망설임의 시간이 쌓이고 있습니다. 지금 이 순간을 놓쳐서는 안 됩니다. 그 어느 때보다 강력한 협력과 파트너십을 통해 공동 대응에 나서야 합니다. 저는 오늘 이 자리에서 여러 회원국에 확실하게 말씀드릴 수 있습니다. 친환경 모빌리티, 디지털 도시 인프라가 함께하는 스마트 도시는 인간과 자연의 공존을 이끄는 중요한 플랫폼이 될 것입니다. 인류의 지속 가능성을 담보하는 핵심 가치가 될 것입니다. 때문에 내일의 도시에 미룰 수는 없습니다. 오늘의 도시가 반드시 해야만 합니다. 오늘 인류의 하나된 다짐과 행동은 도시가 더 이상 지구의 재앙이 아닌 또 다른 허파의 역할을 하게 할 것입니다. 정말 가능하겠냐고 누군가가 물으신다면 저는 이야기 이서두에 말씀드린 영화 속 대사로 대신하고자 합니다. 코로나19라는 요리 없는 재앙이 전 인류를 휩쓸고 있지만 국경 없는 노력으로 차근차근 이겨내고 있는 것처럼 우리는 답을 찾아낼 것입니다. 언제나 그래왔듯이. We will find a way. We always have. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now he offered the insightful word regarding innovative measures and future directions to establish the carbon-neutral society. Now, everyone, next His Excellency Flemming Miller Mortensen, the Minister for Development Cooperation and the Minister for Nordic Cooperation, Denmark, will.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Every day, the streets of Copenhagen are full of people cycling, coming rain or shine, even me this morning. In the summer, people take a dip in the harbor of Copenhagen. They enjoy the clean waters of our capital. And in winter, they ski down the roof of the waste-to-energy power station in the middle here in Copenhagen. I can just see it from my window here in my office. Buses and ferries are switching from diesel to electricity. And the web of thousands of bike lanes are connected by new green bike ring roads. Copenhagen is on track to become one of the world's first carbon neutral cities in 2025. And in this way is setting a green standard for urban centers worldwide. It wasn't always like that. 10 years ago, you couldn't swim in the canals. Public transportation was polluting the air, and it certainly wasn't possible to ski down a green energy power station here in our capital. Going green followed from the oil crisis in the 70s. The crisis forced us to build more energy efficient buildings and experiments with renewable energy. And we soon realized that one of the fundamental elements of changing is partnerships. In Denmark, 2/3 of our cities and municipalities are already committed to become a climate neutral and resilient. And partnerships are key in this process. Our two largest cities, Copenhagen and Aarhus, are frontrunners when it comes to partnerships. And they are smart cities leaders. Partnerships was also what the mayors of some of the largest cities in the world needed when COVID-19 hit. They became first responders, not only to the health crisis, but also to the social and economic crisis caused by the pandemic. One of their responses was to establish a COVID-19 recovery task force that unites more than 50 mayors across the world to share experiences on how to tackle the pandemic. They also made a commitment to a green and just recovery from COVID-19 through 9 principles, including equality, sustainability, and resilience are key. The pandemic has made us all aware of the importance of resilient cities, cities that thrive in the face of the multiple risks posed by climate change, cities that are water resilient, cities that improve across to clean water and hygiene for their citizens, while at the same time protecting them from flooding and diseases. We see rapid urbanizations in many developing countries, in particular in Africa and Asia. By 2050, more than 1.5 billion people will live in African cities, more than double the numbers of today. That's why we are enhancing our engagements with cities at many levels. We have strengthened our commitment with the C40 network. Our partnership with them forces our cities in the global south, in particular cities in Africa, where we are co-developing adaptation action for water-safe cities. And we have built strong partnerships between Danish cities and cities in India, Ghana, and South Africa, to mention a few. These partnerships bring together experts who share experiences on sustainable city planning and green solutions and learn from each other. The pandemic is still ongoing, and cities represent opportunities for resilience and sustainable development. We need to take action together to combine public and private expertise, solutions, and finance for smart and resilient green cities. To summarize, partnerships between civil society and private and public sectors from the backbone of our green transition. We are promoting the same structure through P4G. And you will hear more about these important partnerships from Danfoss, Henning Larsen Architects, and surely some of the many other businesses represented here today. With these words, I wish you a fruitful session, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I hope you do hold your hands with Korea as the partnerships and also go forward for your plan. Thank you very much once again. And pointing out we should create policies for sustainable urban development through international solidarity and achieve the UN's agenda for sustainable development was very noteworthy, I think. Thank you very much once again. And now we'll start the session by the P4G Hub on mobilize e-mobility investment in Latin America and share replication opportunities for Africa and Asia, and scale energy efficiency buildings. As I mentioned just in the beginning of this session, this will be personally carried out by the P4G Hub. So before we start the session, we would like to meet all panelists and the moderator. So hello everyone. Hi. Hello. I'd like to give my greeting, waving my hands. Thank you so much for joining us today. And also, I think some of our honored guests started in the very early morning. Thank you very much once again. And also, I'd like to introduce to you the chairman, the P4G Director of Strategy and Engagement, Laila Imstrat. She will be the moderator for this session. Hi, Laila.
Hello.
thank you very much. And I think I will be able to take a short break because of you. Thank you. So would you please take a microphone to start this session?
Thank you, Ms. Moon, and welcome everybody to the P4G session on cities. I'm Lila Yim Sarat, Director of Strategy and Engagement at P4G. And today we have an esteemed group of speakers participating in the discussion. This is a really important topic for all of us because without a vision for transforming our cities, we can't meet our net zero goals. Cities account for 75% of global carbon emissions, with buildings and transportation contributing the most. And we need new ways of doing things with inclusive solutions that bring developing countries into the heart of this transformation. And in this session, we'll be hearing from our P4G partners and partnerships and board members who are leading the vision for net zero targets in buildings and transportation, and developing the innovative business models and financing schemes needed to make net zero a reality. At this point, I'd like to kick off our session with a brief video that provides an overview of some of P4G's innovative partnerships.
From advancing e-mobility solutions to net zero buildings, P4G partnerships are trailblazing initiatives to achieve a sustainable urban transformation.
Green investments in public transport systems will create 4.6 million additional jobs by 2030 across just 100 cities in C40 and protect tens of millions of workers in lower income and service sector jobs. Platforms like P4G are key to implementing global agendas advanced by C40 for sustainable and smart cities at speed and scale.
P4G has systematically built an e-mobility partnership pipeline in Latin America, in public transport and freight through partnerships like Zebra to accelerate commercial deployment.
To successfully decarbonize and design equitable cities, we need to make radical changes. We need large-scale investment in areas like public transport and energy-efficient building.
P4G Partnership Building Efficiency Accelerator provides cities with the tools they need to implement energy-efficient building policies. With catalytic funding and strategic guidance from P4G, the partnership recruited 12 new cities to grow its network to encompass 26 cities in Latin America. P4G is a global platform delivering transformative impact with a pipeline of more than 50 partnerships and a global ecosystem spanning 12 country partners, 5 organizational partners, and more than 240 business and civil society partners. Join us in pioneering green partnerships and investing in impact.
I would now like to introduce our 3 keynote speakers who will share how they are building momentum to a net zero vision in cities and how P4G can help scale that vision. First, we'll have Nigel Topping, high-level champion for climate action for COP26, where his role is to strengthen the collaboration and drive action from businesses, investors, organizations, and cities. And then we'll turn it over to Christina Gamboa, CEO of the World Green Building Council, which is leading the way on net zero buildings and has led P4G's Building Efficiency Accelerator Partnership. And then finally, I'll turn it over to Daniel Gomez, Colombia Deputy Minister for National Planning. Colombia is one of the countries where the P4G Zebra electric bus partnership is being implemented. Nigel, I'll turn it over to you now.
Great. Thank you, Lila. It's great to be with you. I'm really excited to be talking about how P4G's model for scaling up public-private partnerships is playing a really key role in delivering on the ambitious climate commitments we're seeing now, especially in developing countries. Of course, in the lead up to COP26 in Glasgow later this year, but remembering that this is the decade of delivery. With my fellow high-level champion Gonzalo Munoz from Chile, we launched the Race to Zero nearly a year ago in June 2020 to galvanize ambitious climate action amongst subnational and non-state actors, so cities, regions, businesses, and investors. And that means that everyone who joins the Race to Zero commits to getting to zero by 2050 at the latest, but playing their fair share in halving emissions by 2030. And that's what we really focus on is this next decade. So the Race to Zero, it's a UN-led campaign that's really focused on credibility and action. No empty long-term pledges without concrete plans. that are in line with the science, which says we've got to halve by 2030. And that's one of the reasons why we're so excited about P4G, and we see it as so important, because we've got to go from targets to plans to action quickly. And we need innovative and practical partnerships. We've seen some examples in the video, so that these solutions become cheaper and more accessible, and we go faster and faster. So I'd say that we see P4G as a crucial platform for pursuing those kind of solutions in developing economies that will help us in the lead up to and beyond COP26 to demonstrate and replicate and accelerate successful practices, for turning the momentum of commitments into meaningful action. I think it's clear that P4G member countries are really helping to raise ambition, but we know there's a lot more to be done. I'd say not least from our host country this year, which is a crucial turning point in turning its commitment into action for the decade ahead. We were really thrilled to see President Moon's bold net zero pledge. Last year, of course, we've now seen the UK, United States, Japan all step up with their own pledges for more than 50% reductions by 2030. So we look forward to seeing Korea keeping up with that race to zero and what the science requires, with a bold trajectory in more detail soon. And that's going to mean turning that national ambition into action closer to the ground, so we generate real decarbonisation momentum that creates political space for bolder commitments at the national level. That's what we call the ambition loop. So a couple of examples from what I'm seeing in Korea. The Jungnam province leading the way as the first subnational region from Asia to join the race to zero. Important to remember that Jungnam made it the first official commitment to coal phase out in any region in Asia back in 2018, which will eventually lead to the closure of 14 coal-fired power plants by 2026. That's hugely significant, given that Jungnam accounts for 20% of Korea's emissions. And that's the kind of leadership that creates the political space for clear and unambiguous calls from respected international agencies like the IEA, which just this week has made it very clear that all OECD countries must phase out coal by 2030, and that globally there can be no new investment in fossil fuel production or projects. Back at the local level, to the theme today, 708 cities globally have joined the race to zero so far. That includes 87 cities from P4G member countries, spearheading the decarbonisation of urban environments. 2 Korean cities, Seoul and Chuncheon, have joined the race to zero, and another Korean province, Gangwon, joined the Powering Past Coal Alliance earlier this month. And there are many other public-private partnership success stories for decarbonising key sectors such as transport and the built environment. And I'm looking forward to hearing more shortly from Deputy Minister Gomez, Cristina Gamboa, and then the other panellists on this whole range from electrifying transport in Colombia to scaling up work on green buildings and energy efficiency in Chile to the energy transformation from diesel to renewables in small island states. In all cases, we achieve win-win outcomes for governments, businesses, and people alike. So I'd close by encouraging all cities, regions, and businesses and other non-state actors from the P4G countries to join the race to zero, to send a strong signal that they're uniting behind the achievement of the Paris Agreement goals. And I really look forward to seeing more and more P4G initiatives accelerating action towards a more inclusive, resilient, zero-carbon economy. Thank you, Lila.
Thank you, Nigel. That is a fabulous way to start our session about showing the global mandate. And I really like what you said in terms of we need to increase ambition to do what the science requires in terms of addressing climate change. I'd now like to turn it over to Cristina Gamboa, CEO of the World Business Council.
Thank you very much, Leila. Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you very much. We're very proud to partner with P4G. The World Green Building Council is a network of 70 green building councils that are accelerating the decarbonization of the built environment worldwide. One of these ways we do this is by building capacity and strong partnerships like the one we have for P4G, but in particular, as Nigel was saying, between public and private sector. So through the World GBC's work in the Building Efficiency Accelerator platform and the work we did, we took an approach to tackle energy efficiency in buildings in Latin America. We couldn't have done this without the support of P4G, because we, as a partnership, were able to align many cities in Latin America with the international trajectory to net zero. So with the leadership of our green building councils, we facilitated that private-public collaboration to tackle energy efficiency. And as the IEA report said this week, we're getting buildings net zero ready. That's very important. As a result of our work, there was 4 key energy efficiency policies that were enacted, are now rolled out, 2 standards that bring the best practice to cities, and that means that they will not be going down a path of carbon intensity in all the new builds, for example, in Bogotá, in Montería, in Colombia. And in Mexico, we had some good wins in terms of government procurement. There are also 10 other policies in Central America, Chile, Guatemala, Costa Rica. It's really interesting to see the uptake from the cities wanting to do better, the partnerships bringing the best in class knowledge and practice. And that way we're contributing also in this collaboration with WRI, C40 on bringing more cities forward in the race to zero. In particular, World GBC has a zero carbon buildings declaration, and the city of Medellin in Colombia, for example, also has some strong commitments. But I would like to flag, sometimes activating the ambition loop that Nigel was saying takes a little bit more further effort. Because most of these policies, even though they're going to impact the new builds and we're going to have, let's say, low carbon growth in the new developments, we need to shift and focus to housing. Non-commercial buildings across Latin America are at least 70% of all new builds. And it's an area where there's the least, let's say, uptake of best practice. So we have to address housing to get to the ambitions of the Paris Agreement and accelerating net zero and the race to zero. So also I wanted to say that we have to be mindful that in many developing countries, the mitigation or decarbonization language is not yet mainstream. The race to resilience is key. And as we accelerate the knowledge in terms of what it takes to make livelihoods better, we will have a better understanding and we'll have a better uptake of that mitigation also brings better resilience. There's great housing examples in this pathway from countries like South Africa to Indonesia. And as we marriage the benefits of resiliency and mitigation, I know that we will find ways also to bring the responsible investment movement forward and innovative financial mechanisms for housing to really be in the race to zero and, of course, deliver a better quality of life and better quality infrastructure that we all need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Really wonderful to hear these concrete examples of how we can meet the ambition loops that Nigel was talking about. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Deputy Minister Gomez.
Colombia is fully committed to strengthening the transition to more sustainable paths of economic growth, reducing emissions through sustainable cities and communities, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and the bioeconomy. In particular, Colombia recently approved a national policy for economic recovery with sustainability and inclusive growth as its guiding lights. The policy was issued by the National Council on Economic and Social Policy, and it builds upon a set of policies, including the Green Growth Policy from 2018. So Colombia was already on a path towards sustainability in line with our international commitments to reduce emissions and our NDC commitments. But with the COVID recovery plan, we seek to accelerate all of these objectives in particular, and in line with all the policy instruments that we have issued. We have a strategy for sustainable and resilient economic recovery that is based on several pillars: infrastructure and sustainable cities, bioeconomy, nature-based solutions. In terms of urban policy, we also recently approved our urban and regional development policies that include elements of sustainability that are very interesting. The Urban Mobility Plan was created by national law in 2006. We are developing those plans, and it seeks to promote mobility in non-motorized modes and transportation systems. Between 2006 and 2019, 69 cities formulated their sustainability and safe mobility plans. these have to be implemented. We have implementation challenges that we seek to implement and to accelerate as a response to the crisis. In terms of electric mobility, Colombia has managed to position itself as the first city in Latin, as the first country in Latin America, and second in the world with the most awarded electric buses. This has been possible thanks to efforts made by large cities such as Bogotá, Medellín, Cali, that are strengthening the policy and regulatory frameworks to replace their fleets, their public fleets, with electric vehicle laws. Colombia looks forward to strengthening engagement with P4G for global climate action and embarking in specific PPP projects for economic recovery while meeting our ambitious targets of reducing greenhouse emissions by 51% by 2030. We are also very excited to host the 2023 summit in Colombia, and we hope to receive you all in some form, in person or through digital means, to continue building our global commitment with strategies both at the city level and at the national levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vice Minister. Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, Christina, for your excellent and inspiring remarks. And also, I'd like to remark on Daniel's and Colombia's leadership in hosting the 2023 P4G Summit. It's a tremendous invitation he just extended. We look forward to bringing the whole P4G ecosystem of partners and leaders to Colombia. At this point, I'd like to now move on to our panel discussion, where our distinguished panelists will share their insights on what is needed to make this reality this vision that we just heard about, the opportunities for net zero, the opportunities for inclusive green recovery, to make that a reality. Our four panelists are first, Monica Araya, Special Advisor to COP26 Climate Champion Nigel Topping. Second, Brian Wisk, Chief Investment Officer with Asymmetric Return Capital. Lars Tveen, President of Developing Regions for Danfoss, will be our third panelist. And finally, Dennis Awore, Chairman of Toyota Kenya. I will pose the same question to all four of our speakers, all four of our panelists. What innovative solutions are you involved with that are unlocking investment for transformative change in the city sector? Monica.
Thank you, Laila, and thank you for having me with Nigel. I think this is the first time I'm in the same event with Nigel Topping, which is great. So before we get to finance, because that is the key part of this story, especially in Latin America, and considering all the very positive things that are happening, I wanted to recap a key word that Nigel used, which is this idea that we have a race to zero framing in the run-up to COP. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because we need to have a very clear vision of where we're going. And the race to zero concept captures that, because it captures the idea that it's a race. So we're not walking around the park, taking our time. We have to move fast, and we're in a race to zero. So we're talking about zero-emission buses. We're talking about getting rid of diesel. We're talking about being very unapologetic about this and say, if we know that diesel is bad, gasoline is bad for people, for the city, is bad for climate, why are we going to postpone the transition? So given that we have this on the table in the run-up to COP, I really would like to put on the table the notion that North Star means that at some point, breakthroughs will happen when cities and governments say, after this date, say 2030, 2035, new sales of buses will only be electric. Zero emissions could be, a fuel cell bus or battery. The point is, zero is the key. And the reason why I'm saying this is because if we don't have that in our discussions about finance, Laila, then it gets confusing, and then we waste time and we don't go through the breakthrough. What I have seen in Latin America is that the breakthrough we saw in Chile first. Chile and Colombia have a very friendly competition, which is fantastic. I'm rooting for both. I'm from Costa Rica. The breakthrough came because of smart financing. It wouldn't have happened only through national policy or through business leadership. It was the smart combination of saying, there is this leasing model, nobody has done it, let's go for it. The other point that I wanted to emphasize, and this is where P4G comes in, is the notion of partnerships. This idea of putting together a city, a supplier that publicly commits to putting those zero-emission buses in the market, and having investors alongside saying, and I am going to provide capital, that has the zebra concept that I was mentioning in the video. And I would invite anybody to go and look for it. I think that is the key to what we need to do in the next months, in the next years, in the run-up to COP, tell the story. And finally, in addition to breakthroughs, leapfrogging, which is a very important term in Latin America, we want to leapfrog to zero emissions. It's not just being more efficient or a little bit less dirty. It's a leapfrog is the people. We need to tell the stories of the bus drivers. They love electric buses, the users, the children, the people in the city, so that it doesn't just have this connotation of, a finance story or a climate story or even a planning story. It is about the people. And I would be very happy to work with you, Leila, and P4G about on telling this story so that it doesn't come across as something that can wait.
Really appreciate those points and love the broad framing of that this is a race, it's not a walk. I know that Brian has a lot to say in terms of innovative financing models, so I'll turn it over to Brian.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'll just pick up where Monica left off because I thought that was a perfect context for what we've been doing on ARC side. The goals when you really get into the weeds are super ambitious, and there's two primary challenges that we've run into in cities like Cali, and I think there's been a ton of focus on what Santiago's done, what Bogota has done, but to really make this a global story, we really have to start getting to all the cities and coming up with a plan that's bankable and then can deal with the, technology anxiety. So you have operators on the ground on the public transit side that have been used to a certain technology for decades, which is diesel and then recently CNG. So, what we've tried to do is use finance to come up with a model that's been applied in other asset classes like aircraft leasing to consolidate that technology risk and then scale that. And one way that we've sought to do that is, moving things like the powertrain and the battery and the charging into an OpEx instead of a CapEx. And this is something that I think we're trying to apply in many cities globally, but this lowers the overall cost for the municipality, increases the bankability, and greatly increases the probability of bringing international capital into this and being able to standardize it. So that's where we've really done all the work on the ground. And then P4G has been a great partner to communicate the lessons learned, and there's been so many to the national level. So hopefully over the next 12 to 24 months, we can get that story out more broadly to other cities. And that way you don't have to do it, one project at a time. We can work in parallel with many, many partners. And already you're seeing a lot of capital come into this space. So hopefully all of the work that's been done over the last 3 years in this early phase will start to pay dividends this year and post-COVID.
Fabulous. Really interesting about your comment of moving from, the OpEx into CapEx for the other way around, for accelerating the financing and reducing the risk. We've been talking about the opportunities in terms of cleaning up the transport sector. At this point, love to hear from Lars about the other important sector that is contributing to emissions from cities and the great opportunities that we have to reduce emissions.
Thanks a lot, Lila. Yes, I'm moving a little bit back to buildings. But first of all, I would like to say energy efficiency has to deliver 40% of the global emission reduction needed to reach the Paris Agreement. Therefore, International Energy Agency and Danfoss, we have three very simple rules. First, let's save the energy we can save, energy efficiency. Two, let's use the energy already produced, called sector coupling. Three, let's turn the remaining part green. And I think that's one thing. The other one is buildings responsible for nearly 40% of the total direct and indirect CO2 emission. So the absolute biggest contributor. And that's why we believe it's a good idea to focus on energy efficiency and buildings. And the good thing here is that we already have a lot of well-proven solutions ready. And that is why Danfoss, we are interested to take the lead on sharing experience from what we are doing in buildings to bring down CO2 in a financial attractive way, because that's possible. We have an example from Consplant Tower in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, 20-story building retrofitted with a new efficient cooling system from Danfoss. Result, 60-70% energy efficiency, payback time, 2 years. So green and financial attractive can actually walk hand in hand. And we have many other examples because we believe a lot in seeing is believing. That's the right way forward. So we see opportunity for P4G and developing countries to be at the forefront to bring down the CO2 in both new build and retrofit and create a job machine, because energy efficiency is the best job creator, not to forget. So thanks.
Wonderful. And at this point, I'd love to now turn it over to Dennis. And Lars, that was a great transition from, this one big sector of electric buses to buildings to efficiency. And now, Dennis, I know you've been doing lots of innovative work relative to electric vehicles that are, again, getting smaller and smaller in terms of the asset class and the impact needed in terms of outreach.
Thank you, Lila, and hi, everyone. At Toyota, we are totally committed, and our main objective is to head towards net zero emissions as a company, both from in our operations and in our products that we sell. So we are very much involved in the ongoing revolution within the industry that will see vehicles heading towards being electric vehicles with zero emission. And here in Kenya, the country itself is committed also to climate change, to its climate change agenda consistent with the SDGs and the National Development Plan, the Paris Accord, and the African Union Agenda 2063. And in line with this, the country has developed key policies, legislation, and strategies designed to promote the green economy and take advantage of the climate finance available. We've heard that globally the transport sector accounts for at least 22% of all energy-related emissions, while in Kenya, studies show that it contributes about 13 to 17%. Kenya has about 3.2 million vehicles, out of which 1.7 million are four-wheelers and more, and 1.5 million are two to three-wheelers. The public transport is largely provided using minibuses, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and boats. And out of these, two-wheelers account for nearly 60% for public transport. So introducing e-mobility, especially for public transport and goods movement, represents a very good opportunity to leapfrog conventional mobility to sustainable alternatives and substantially reduce emissions from this sector. A lot of work here in Kenya has gone towards introducing e-mobility, beginning with the 2- and 3-wheelers, to be followed in time by cars, trucks, and buses. And among the research that has been done, there's that's been done by the Siemens team in partnership with P4G and the United Nations Environment Program, as well as through companies like ours and other companies and private sector entities. Developing the electric mobility will also be in keeping with the country's drive towards industrialization, since the plan is to assemble the units locally from fully knocked down kits and progressively introduce and increase the number of components that are manufactured in Kenya. The 2-wheel and 3-wheeler units will require, obviously, a network of charging stations and possibly battery swapping stations as well, which the development of which will lead to employment and technology transfer. The current scenario includes the mushrooming of one-pump petrol stations in villages and small towns to serve the 2-wheelers. And this can be extended to cater for electric units by installing charging units. Concepts such as charging vans are also being developed, and there's interest from the utility companies to offer charging infrastructure. And this, of course, will lead to an increase and a deepening of its charging network. The same will apply to service and maintenance repair centers, which can also be expanded to include the servicing and maintenance of electric vehicles. And we're playing a role in helping in capacity building, training for the people involved. This ecosystem also will include utilizing power from the national grid where it is available and solar power where it is not available. And off-grid solar power is now being made more and more available through different programs run by companies and cooperative societies. And even we ourselves are taking part in this program and putting up solar power plants in different locations. All in all, support for electric mobility, we believe, will lead to the building of a whole new industry and the expansion of an existing one, with the inherent increase, of course, in employment. So we are committed, and we have begun the journey through the 2-wheelers and the 3-wheelers, and we'll then move on to the 4-wheelers and above. Thank you, Laila.
Thank you, Dennis. That was a terrific way to talk about how P4G Partnerships, the one that we're currently supporting, is aligned with the country priorities, but most importantly, how you see it leading to good green jobs and how there's this opportunity for leapfrogging. I'd like to pose a second question to you all, and we have only 5 minutes remaining, so maybe limit your response to a minute at this point. But can you all share your thoughts on how a platform like P4G, which is focused on partnerships, can help to scale your agenda? Monica.
I would like P4G, given that it's so good already, to make sure that the engagement in these key countries that you're working with also brings on board the local financial sector, the local banking sector, because they are still financing a lot of things that are not leading us to zero emissions. So that engagement with the local money will be critical. So I have a longer answer, but I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian.
Yeah, I think it's really standardization and making sure that the models that we're using to deploy capital align with the national policies, and that model, gets driven at the national level with close buy-in at the local and municipal level. And that's where P4G has been instrumental over the last couple of years of working on this. And I think that's only going to continue as we move from country to country and continent to continent.
Thank you. Lars.
I'm impressed with the P4G setup. It provides an engaged network with strong local buy-in, and that is needed when we talk about energy efficiency because it's difficult to understand. So we need P4G's help explaining on a pixie book level what kind of solutions we are talking about. We should not talk components. We should talk solution. We should talk something decision maker they understand and they can see that is worth. And that is why also I think it's important that solutions are ready. And if the world knew what the world knows, we could move so much faster. And that's where I see the P4G is a key part of bringing more speed into that process.
Thank you. And Dennis?
I'd just like to finish by saying that we need P4G to do more of what it's already doing, bringing the different stakeholders together, both from the government side, the private sector side, the civil society side, to forge and develop the plan and implement it towards this great objective that we have of going to carbon zero. Thank you.
That's a wonderful way to wrap up our panel discussion where, central to P4G is the word partnerships and all of your comment about how you can have these wonderful solutions, but unless you're able to work in partnership with the local communities, unless we are able to communicate the need for implementing these solutions at the speed and scale required to address climate change, we're not going to be successful. So really appreciate your remarks, really appreciate your support for P4G, and most importantly, appreciate your leadership in this space. Thank you. At this point, I'll just wrap up our entire session. It's been tremendously valuable to hear from our speakers about these concrete examples of innovative market-based solutions that can help countries not only meet their climate commitments, but equally importantly, lead to greater efficiencies and innovation. These solutions can help drive jobs and investment in developing countries and are equitable, ensuring that actors in developing countries are at the heart of the transformation to build back better and greener. We started the session hearing about the global movement towards a race to zero and the critical role that country commitments to sustainability and building back better and greener are playing in the transition to more sustainable cities. We also heard about the need for creative finance to scale the level of investment needed to make the transition a reality, and about the new technologies that can make net zero a reality. But in the end, sustainable cities are actually very personal. The buildings we live in and the way we get from one place to another impact our life on a daily basis. And it's tremendously exciting to think that in the next 10 years, you and I can see a dramatic shift from the gasoline-powered transportation to quiet, clean vehicles that are powered by renewable energy, and that we can live and work in net zero buildings. And P4G is working to scale these solutions to make this a reality. So thank you for joining us in the session, and we hope you are as inspired as we are. Ms. Moon, I'm handing it back to you to guide us through the next discussion. Thank you.
Yes, it is quite a shame to wrap up this session. Thank you very much once again, all panels and the moderator as well. And we were able to hear about various ways to protect the environment in our daily life through this session. And I believe that there are definitely ways to protect the environment and safely protect our daily life by just practicing small things. And we heard various cases of best practices from each country. So once again, we would like to sincerely thank the panel members for connecting online today. You're now watching the city session of the P4G Seoul Summit. Before we move on to the next session, let me briefly guide you through the event done with online viewers. Everyone currently watching this broadcast, if you take a picture proving you're catching the premiere of the broadcast and leave a comment and photo on the event page. Yes, watching live proof photo posted on the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, Korea Agency for Infrastructure Technology Advancement, SNS, will give a prize, a small gift through a raffle. We ask for your participation. Thank you very much. Even with the event, we arranged the session so that you can enjoy it more than ever. The city session of the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit, in no time at all, we only have the last panel discussion remaining. In the panel discussion, experts from each field, such as private-public mix, architecture, and city, traffic, and platforms, will be presenting on the topic of development direction of smart cities and P4G partnership. We'll discuss the role of smart cities and establish global public-private partnerships for green recovery, carbon neutral society, and climate crisis response. Then we will first examine the development direction in the field of private-public mix. George Saraiva, Vice President of Digital Town Europe in Portugal, will be joining us. He will make a presentation about P4G partnerships and the role of smart cities. So, Saraiva, would you please begin your presentation?
My name is George Saraiva. I'm leading the European network of city policy labs. So what we're trying to do is actually get involved and look to the city. The cities actually are very hierarchy again. And we know this is not the system that is going to work. We learned from the pandemic that this system is not working very well. This is the kind of, if you have a mayor or if you have a president, when you have a pandemic, for example, he feels the responsibility to have all the answers, but nobody knows, nobody has all the answers. So the next paradigm is something new called allocracy, and it's a city allocracy, which means what? Means circles of expertise. Instead of having one mayor that has to have all the answers and has to communicate all the answers, we create circles. We create circles for health. We create circles for science. We create circles for technology. And those circles are responsible to come up with solutions and try and fail and try again until we find the way. This is the principle of city allocracy. It's also a principle that's working very well since 2015 in many countries. And this is exactly the next paradigm shift. And we created a kind of this roadmap to allocratic cities. It's simple 5 steps where we combine all the best practices that you have in the world into one roadmap and list them in the way. It's simple. It starts by first the cities should have a city development agency. As a development agency, they need to develop their own people. They need to develop the partnerships. They need to develop solutions, and they need to develop innovation. And this is first, cities really need to have this structure. We in the European Network of Policy Labs, we call this the future building ecosystems. Then the city needs to focus on the city DNA. It's exactly their DNA, what their nature, their identity, because you cannot thrive in the future if you don't know where you are, if you are not consistent with whom you are. The next step is the city donut economy. That's where you define the boundaries, where you can play and the borders that you cannot cross. And then, of course, you have the mission-oriented policy, where you define what is our mission, and others, all the circles, combined make a mission approach. To work with this and to work efficiently on these partnerships, you need to have a canvas. And we developed this Sustainable Innovation Campus. This is happening in many cities already. That's why sometimes you hear that Amsterdam has this city donut economy developed for them. And you will hear lots of examples like Paris in 15 minutes city and things like that. What I would like to show you is how Europe is basing a vision and taking this roadmap as one big continent. Starting to explain this, it starts by the agency. I explained it in the beginning. The agency doesn't have to have regulatory power. And we have this agency in Europe. It's called European Union, European Commission. Right? They don't really have this legislation, regulatory power over the countries. They can only advise, they can only guide, they can only inspire. Sometimes they can fund. And that's happening nowadays. And DNA is a very important mixture of different factors. I mean, first you need to go to our history and culture, where you have this sense of pride. I mean, Europe has a big sense of pride. We're very proud of ourselves. When you combine these factors with another factor, which is the golden opportunity, what is our role? What should be our role on a globalized world, which in this case is the Green Deal? It's to focus on a decarbonized economy. Then, combining this DNA, we manage to go consistently into a new direction. The next step, as I explained it before, is the principles of Kate. I mean, it's the donut economy. Basically, donut economy defines two boundaries. On the top, you have the ecological ceiling. You can do whatever, but you have a limitation. You cannot jeopardize anymore the planet. You have to be careful about climate change. You have to be careful about the ozone. You have to be careful about the diversity. So everything is allowed if you don't cross that ceiling. But also you have the social foundation. This is where cities, for example, start to say, what is our living standard, our minimum living standard in our city? And you cannot go lower than this. You cannot exploit, you have to include, you cannot. The next step, of course, is how we're doing in Europe. And that's one part of the Green Deal. Green Deal is something called mission-oriented policy. Basically, what we have as a governance role is a vision. It's just saying we have this vision to be carbon neutral by 2050. I can assure you now, there are no one in Europe that can tell you how we can reach that goal. But that's a goal. That's the purpose of governance. You inspire and set a goal. Based on that, you fund all mission approaches. So there's a lot of calls, a lot of teams, and that's where it becomes this holacratic approach. So circles of experts start making mission approaches. That goes about energy transition, that goes about energy communities, that goes about everything that you can have in the system. What happens is, first round, you invest in all the mission approaches. Then you start pruning. What it means that is those missions that are contributing to the goals that we have made it, they can continue in future rounds. Actually, they will be enforced in future rounds because you're taking money from those that are not performing and investing on those that are performing. And then you have as many rounds as needed until 2050. This is the mission-oriented policy. It can be used in a city as it's being used in the continent-wide. Last but not least, when you have these mission approaches, you have teams. You have these quadruple helix teams. It's not just about public, private, and even academia. It's more a quadruple helix. It's public, private, academia, and people and citizens engage in the solution. So how can you converge and manage different interests in one mission approach? That was one of the big problems that we've been finding in the European Union. And we decided that the point that we need to do actually is to engage citizens, companies, and business in a value creation process. The first main point is the value creation process is an upward spiral for progress. And that's exactly our main goal. You need to start by people saying what's our value proposition and move for the value creation and then analyze the impact that this innovation has. But before that, you need a canvas. And that's exactly what we're trying to build. We decided to build the Sustainable Innovation Canvas, which is a model that we are having to drive the government, the academia, the business, and citizens into cooperation and to build this upward spiral. This starts by analyzing all the resources that exist, all the resources that you need for a specific mission approach. And by resources, I include also technologies, and also a big mindset on the behaviors. It's important to start defining that there are, of course, the financials attached to this. And it's not just blended financials, it's a commitment. If someone brings a resource into the game, then it's a cost. And that stakeholder is supporting a cost, and it should go for the cost structure. Right? And at the end, you create a kind of a regulatory framework, which could be protected. It could be even a sandbox, a regulatory sandbox, to foster this drive and this mission approach. And by there, if you have the cost structure per stakeholder, you also have the revenue. Right? So you split the revenue, and then it's clear for all parts. It's clear about the value proposition, it's clear about the value creation, and it's important to see the impact. And then the impact is measured and compared. There are two types of measuring impact. One is, of course, key performance indicators, and that's where most businesses are very focused, is getting high performance on everything that they do to the society, towards the meaning. But that's also a role that the key performance indicators must be followed and governed, and that's the role of governance that people many times forget, is to control and to see if we are distributing the wealth in an equal manner. And it's that is all inclusive. That's why you have the donuts. And that's the regulatory, where the KPIs must be measured and followed. But you have another KPIs. That's the KPI, the key behavior indicators. Most of successful innovations, they have a behavior change. And that behavior change needs to go in line with our mission, with decarbonized economy mission. I really hope, for the sake of the planet, and because I'm European, that we really manage to do this in the proper manner. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much, Vice President Sarhiba, for your useful information and the wonderful presentation. Actually, holacracy is quite inspiring way to make cities safer and smarter, I think. And yes, saving the earth can't be done by the efforts of only one person. It is only possible if the government and the civilians and every citizen must participate. And I will also take part, I promise. Thank you very much once again. And continuing on, we will search for countermeasures in the field of cities. Sonia Stokmark, the Director of Global Design, will give us the presentation on eco-friendly city development, zero energy building, low carbon land, and urban planning. So Sonia, would you please begin the presentation?
Hello, my name is Sonia Stockmar. I am the Global Design Director at Henning Larsen, based in Copenhagen, Denmark. Thank you, first of all, for the invitation. Thanks to P4G, thanks to the embassy in Korea and their program of reinventing cities. In Henning Larsen, we believe and we design innovative, sustainable solutions through research and partnerships. We believe the successful development of cities toward the green transition requires architects and designers to partner with multiple stakeholders. Over the past decade, Henning Larsen has moved from a very project-based design practice to build a global reputation to expand our sustainability strategy through PhD programs. We do architectural design with our applied research, from construction techniques to larger master plans. Henning Larsen has today joined Rambøll to deliver partnerships-led sustainable solutions. Partnerships with stakeholders across the spectrum of society is what is required to build back greener and better. We have expanded our expertise in landscape and urbanism as a response to the global need for leadership in pioneering livable, sustainable, and urban solutions. We work with the latest generation technology to pioneer green solutions at an urban scale, bringing water and green spaces to the city to recover, restore, and regenerate our cities of the future. From visions in master plans, narratives, experiences, to sustainable construction. By 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in cities. To keep up, we must build a new city for 1 million people each week. We see deforestation, 10 million hectares per year. We live in a super complex time of challenges. We believe it's time for partnerships, to join forces in a shared ambition. And to be able to design our future, we need to work closer across investors, local communities, city representatives, and consultants to design smarter and greener. With research and knowledge, we can identify the challenges and listen to the unbuilt spaces. We can learn from the knowledge and experience and do much better. But to foresee the changes and challenges we are facing, we can see what impact we create to be able to minimize the impact and create a better environment. Henning Larsen invests in research to develop our tools and see how we can use natural resources as wind, sun, and biodiversity to create this better environment. So how do we design resilient cities? A master plan in Toronto, we believe that history creates value. And with a minimum of intervention, we can do a lot. This project is a transformation of a former airport where runways are transformed into livable places with people as a focus and as a design driver. We've added new functions, loads of landscape and nature in a worn-out industrial area to create an attractive neighborhood for people to enjoy. This is happening right now in partnerships with the city, local communities, and consultants. We believe in placemaking. This project, Cockle Bay in Sydney, creates a confident, clear, and poetic gesture for the people in the heart of downtown Sydney. Cockle Bay Park is designed to be both a human scale destination and a true urban icon on the skyline. Bay Park focuses on the eye-level experience of the development's two scales, the city scale, where the tower joins the skyline, and the village scale, where people move between the city and the waterfront. We also believe that we can use nature's resources smart. This is Jurong Lakeside Gardens in Singapore. We believe that landscape and experiences can be the engine to filter the city and the pollution from the city, to protect the built environment. In this case, the water has become the attraction and the value creator of the neighborhood seen in the back, for people to enjoy and for the citizens to store and purify the rainwater with only natural solutions, to give back life and biodiversity. We design in partnerships. This is Wolfsburg city in Germany. This is to create a new way of living. It's to develop the old car manufacturer Volkswagen to become a complete and human-driven district within the city, allowing for new partnerships both in process and project development. In this project, the urban approach is key to the solution, where the river was a divider between industry and the city. It is transformed into a connector and active destination, a master plan for the city, where connectivity and mix of urban and green public spaces creates a new identity and connects people within the city. Volkswagen headquarters will stay in the district and be weaved into the fabric as an integrated part of the city. We have a project in Seoul, in Korea, and here we believe to build back better. It's called Seoul Valley. So the site is directly north of Seoul Central Station, an area in huge development. Bringing human scale to a sprawling metropolis, Seoul Valley gives a dense urban heart to match the cosmopolitan identity of the capital city with the highest ambition on sustainability. Turning a previously isolated island site into an urban connector, a destination and the shortcut in the city, downscaling a large development into a human scale experience. We use nature as the green filter to filter pollution and to create much better air quality. With 150 different plants and species, each one with a knowledge on how they perform to clean the air and create biodiversity and human-friendly environment using greenery and landscaping to better the air quality at the pedestrian level. We're building the entire podium as a timber structure. The materials we use in our building has an enormous impact on CO2 and a healthy environment. We create a green valley. The future needs to perform like the nature. We want to create a horizontal and vertical experience with roof gardens, green facades, planted walkways, which together create a rich and diverse space, focusing on the welfare and the health of the people. In the podium, we've created a seamless transition between inside and outside, revolutionizing the traditional interior mall experience and turn it inside out, offering green views and outdoor access as part of the mall experience, attracting the future shopper, offering the future of shopping, living and working. We create an urban experience. The program is mixed use, 3 office towers, 2 residential towers, and 1 hotel tower. The podium is connected with pedestrian bridges to support the outdoor activity and meeting points. We want to inspire people. The inner street and the entrances functions as oases. The sound from the leaves shimmering drowns the noise from the traffic, and together with water, the intense green, lush and flowerful biotopes will attract birds and other species to live and enjoy in the city center. The outdoor comfort and quality of life is enhanced by the green experiences and gives the residents and employees an attraction and a pause from the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Director Sonia Stomov, for your presentation and to show us beautiful cases of cities with nature. It's quite impressive. She just gave us the opportunity to think of and establish ways to minimize elements of environmental damage when constructing cities and to improve resiliency in cities. Actually, I think future city construction must be carried out in the different direction. Thank you very much once again. Now, everyone, shall we examine the idea in the mobility field? The Park Chul, Vice President, Hyundai Motors Group of Republic of Korea, is here with us at the filming location of the City Session. I would like to show my sincere gratitude for personally making your way here despite your very busy schedule. And Vice President Park Chul will introduce building a carbon neutral city through mobility innovation to eco-friendly vehicles as the measure. Vice President, if you please.
예, 감사합니다. 방금
Thank you very much. I was just introduced by the MC and Vice President Park Chul of Hyundai Motors Group. Today, the title of my presentation is Carbon Neutral City through Mobility Innovation to Eco-Friendly Vehicles. First of all, I'll be talking to you about the evolution of mobility with urbanization. Second, eco-friendly mobility solution, especially eco-friendly cars, more smart services. And eco-friendly, how can we activate them? So those are the gist of my presentation. What is the role of the mobility in the urbanization? Let's take a look at it. In the past as well as currently, if you look at the mobility has been contributing to solving urbanization issues and should continue to play an evolved role in the future. In the past, people purchased cars so that he or she can move around. Nowadays, there's an emergency of mobility service such as car sharing and also improves convenience of movement. However, personal vehicle ownership of mobility service has brought problems of increasing environmental pollution and traffic congestion. Therefore, mobility and urbanization in the future should evolve in more sustainable and eco-friendly way. That should be our work. Based on this background, let me tell you what Hyundai Motor has been doing. Hyundai Motor Company has been striving to contribute to solving such urban problems by evolving into eco-friendly mobility solution provider. The challenge for us is we need to change the direction. There are two things. First, if you look at the left side of my slide, you can see not only eco-friendly cars, but also productions of the hydrogens and storage and distribution, even storage. All of this ecosystem must be built. On top of that, not only the cars, but the most representative activity in providing more efficient and smart mobility service is necessary, which improves efficiency based on AI technology, and furthermore, robo-acts, which improve safety and convenience based on driverless technology and system. Service can also be development and demonstration can be achieved. Now, let me tell you about eco-friendly vehicle. The Korean government is committed to spreading eco-friendly vehicles throughout Korea. A plan to expand hydrogen vehicles and related infrastructure was proposed. If you look at left graph, compared to 2018, once again, in case of the hydrogen vehicle, it has been expanded more than 70 times. In case of charging station, more than 1,000 times. And by 2022, we believe that we'll be able to achieve 100 times growth. And various efforts are being made to revitalize the hydrogen economy, such as passing a bill related to hydrogen economy in February and launching the Hydrogen Economy Committee, which includes Hyundai Motor Group. In line with that, Hyundai Motor Company is working in the same directions as the government policy to spread eco-friendly vehicles. And FCEV started R&D in 1998, which started mass productions in 2013. As of 2021, FCEV is being expanded to apply to various models, including future vehicles such as UAM, as well as buses and mid-large trucks, as well as general passenger cars. In addition, to support the spread of the FCEV vehicle, we are trying to build the FCEV charging stations and also the plant.
국내에서는 2019년도에 충주
In
수소연료 정지 공장
2019, we had a groundbreaking ceremony of Chungju hydrogen fuel cell plant, and we have established 2 more factories, and we have made a huge investment for that. Hyundai Motor is also focused on building a new ecosystem based on hydrogen.
그림에서 보시듯이
If you look at this photo here,
스위스에서는
in Switzerland,
차량의 도입을 확대하기
in order
위해서
to expand the introductions of the hydrogen car,
운영하는 운영자들이
the
겪고
operator
있는
of the hydrogen car,
어려움, 예를
they
들어서
have some
초기에 많은
difficulties,
비용을
especially
부담해야
they
되는
have to share
이런
a
것들을
huge burden
도와주기
in the
위해서
beginning,
이 기존의
and to
차량
relieve
판매,
those
단순 차량
burdens.
판매에 그치는 것이 아니라
Not only
페이퍼
they sell the car, but also the maintenance and other things of all kinds of the new business model was launched. And together with the partner owner, we have established that not only that, in an appropriate level of hydrogen supply, we also made an investment for that. As I have introduced, eco-friendly vehicle is not the only one that we are focusing on, but in order to create more efficient and innovative mobility, we need to focus on different areas. Let me introduce MOD.
MOD라는 것은
MOD stands for Mobility on Demand, which means that the existing transportation is already existing one, but mobility on demand means it's a flexible service that responds to passengers' real-time calls with literally a demand response mobility service. In 2019, from Incheon area, we have introduced iMode service, and within 3 years, we will be implementing that. And based on this demonstration project, we hope that people are waiting for the transportation, but the waiting time will be decreased by 35%. And the trip duration, which means that from one point to another point, the transportation time will be reduced by 40%. This is the expected result. So, in case of this new mobility, the total operation time can be shortened. Therefore, various kinds of pollutions, environmental issues can also be resolved. That is our expectation. On top of that, based on the autonomous driving, we are currently devising and doing a lot of R&D activity to deploy RoboX. RoboX, in other words, means autonomous driving-based services incorporating autonomous driving technology, which are typically defined as 4 types according to the vehicle and service type. In 2019, we have introduced Robo-Taxi policy, which is a demonstration project for public users, and more than 100,000 Robo-Taxi operated data was secured, and more than 97% positive feedback was received through more than 5,000 operations. The collected big data is waiting response after the call confirmed, and also we can definitely make the city more greener as well as eco-friendly city. We believe that that's possible. In order to activate eco-friendly mobility, active support from the government and local government is essential. If you look at left side, productions of the hydrogen, storage, transportation, and also charging station, all of these are called as a software storage or infrastructure, and we need to quickly produce the system to provide that, but it is also necessary to design and operate an incentive mechanism in daily life to lead the change of the behavior of the citizens, such as the green certificate system for users, and also carbon credit system for companies, and carbon neutral city certification system for local governments. So these kind of incentive mechanisms are necessary. By doing that, we believe that people will focus very much on eco-friendly activities.
필요하다고 생각합니다. Hyundai
Motor Company is actively participating in the government support activities for the activations of eco-friendly mobility. In Korea, we are participating as a founding member and a core member of HYNet, which was established for purpose of building a hydrogen refueling stations (HRS), which is necessary for the actual operation of FCEV. HYNet is an SPC established by 13 participating companies including Kogas, Korea Gas Corporation, and Hyundai Motor Group, and is expanding hydrogen charging stations every year using government subsidies and joint funds of participating companies. In order to prepare incentive mechanism, it has been proposed to local governments to verify the virtuous cycle structure such as measuring and certifying carbon reduction, contribution linked to mobility use data based on mobility platform, and granting incentive and credits. So together with the government and also local autonomy, we have proposed this idea and we are working hard. Until now, discussion has been focused on pooling method that provides incentive when using eco-friendly mobility. But when eco-friendly mobility is launched in the future, I hope that we can produce much better result. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Park Chung, Vice President of Hyundai Motors Group. Actually, it is a quite impressive presentation, and thank you very much for the introduction of mobility, new mobility produced by Hyundai Motors Group with high technology to make our life more convenient. There is a high interest in converting to eco-friendly cars in Korea, so we heard your opinions on how much carbon emissions can be reduced by the expansion of new mobility. Thank you very much once again. The next presentation is an opinion in the platform field. Cho Dae-yeon, Senior Research Fellow, Korea Agency for Infrastructure Technology Advancement, Republic of Korea, will present on the topic of realization of smart green city using ICT digital technology. So we'll have Senior Research Fellow Cho Dae-yeon to the stage. Welcome. Would you please start?
안녕하십니까. 방금
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
카이아의 조대현.
I'm Cho Dae-yeon from Kaya.
오늘 P4G 행사를 통해서
Through today's P4G Seoul Summit meeting, I'm sure we will be sharing a lot of information about sustainable cities and green cities, and it's a great pleasure for me to share some of my digital technologies with you today. Today, I'll talk about how the smart cities in Korea have evolved along the way and how digital technologies are applied in smart cities in Korea. And then I will talk about how we can build sustainable partnerships for the future. Well, there are various definitions of smart cities. Basically, when it comes to the objectives of smart city, it is to resolve urban problems, achieve sustainable growth, and integrate digital technologies for economic prosperity. Based on fourth industrial revolution technologies, smart cities have made a lot of progress. Especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, based on Paris Agreement, and by 2050, Korea has declared to be carbon neutral by 2050. So we have to find a way to reduce CO2 emission, and this is a great challenge, and we have to find a way to make that possible within the urban environment. In fact, when you look at Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, there are many goals that are interrelated for the cities safe, resilient, inclusive, sustainable cities are the goals. But in fact, in order to be such cities, we have to resolve transportation, housing, and other various problems. In order to resolve such problems, we need to integrate with various other SDG goals to achieve infrastructure, economic prosperity, improvement of quality of life in Korea, in the cities, and how to make our environment more sustainable. All these goals are interrelated and integrated. And smart cities, of course, could have all the information in a platform to provide services. Then how can we make them integrated in a seamless manner? That is also a very important challenge of the cities. In the case of Korea, since the 1990s, we began
90년대 말에 인터넷이 보급이 되면서 2000년대 초에 한국은 세계 최초로 스마트시티의 모델을 제시할 수 있게 됐습니다. UCT라고 표현을 하고 있습니다만 언제 어디서든 도시 상황을 원거리에서도 쉽게 모니터링할 수 있는 그런 기술을 갖추게 된 것입니다. 이런 모델들이 좀 더 발전이 돼서 최근에는 다양한 형태의 스마트시티 모델을 선보이고 있습니다. 실질적으로 스마트시티 플랫폼은 초기에는 왼쪽에 보시는 것처럼 통합센터를 만들어 놓고 그 통합센터에 CCTV 데이터를 연결시키기도 하고 그 데이터를 가지고 경찰서에다 전달을 하기도 하고 그럼으로써 범죄를 예방한다든지 혹은 화재가 발생했을 때 즉각적으로 대처할 수 있는 그런 기술을 보유하게 됐고요. 최근에는 국가 연구개발사업을 통해서 데이터 허브 모델을 완성했습니다. 뒤에 코비드-19에 대응하는 사례도 제시가 되겠습니다만 이런 데이터를 어떻게 통합해서 잘 활용할 수 있는가 하는 부분이 각 도시별로 스마트시티의 역량을 비교할 수 있는 그런 척도가 된다고 볼 수 있습니다. 그리고 한국은 세계적으로 가장 첨단화된 교통 시스템을 보유하고 있습니다. 예를 들어서 교통카드뿐만 아니라 스마트 톨링이라 그래서 다차로에 통과하면서 바로바로 대금 결제가 될 수 있는 그런 구조라든지 최근에 좀 전에 현대 설명한 것처럼 몰려티를 서비스할 수 있는 그런 플랫폼까지도 현재 개발에 성공하고 있습니다. 그리고 서스테너블한 그런 여러 가지 환경 중에서 이 에너지 관련한 부분이 대단히 중요하거든요. 그래서 서울에서는 이런 제로 에너지 하우스를 개발해서 실질적으로 30% 이상의 에너지 세이빙하는 그런 결과도 도출했습니다. 그리고 공장이라든지 빌딩이나 아파트의 에너지를 쉽게 통합적으로 관리할 수 있는 XEMS 시스템도 현재 개발 완료된 상태입니다. 또한 이러한 시스템들이 기존 도시뿐만 아니라 새로운 도시에 지속 가능한 모델을 만들기 위해서 현재 한국에서는 세종시와 부산시에 이러한 80만 평 정도 되는 80만 제곱미터 정도 면적의 시범 도시를 현재 구축 중에 있고요. 실질적으로 부산 에코델타 시티에는 스마트 빌리지라고 해서 56개 가구들을 중심으로 해서 IoT 솔루션이라든지 다양한 형태의 스마트 솔루션들을 현재 검증할 준비를 하고 있습니다. 그리고 도시 안에 이러한 기술들을 3D 프린팅이나 다양한 첨단 기술들을 쉽게 접목할 수 있는 테스트 사이트도 같이 운영하고 있습니다. 또한 국가적으로는 이런 전략적인 프로그램을 만들어서 대구와 시흥에 저희가 현재 실제적으로 실증을 하고 있습니다. 그리고 디지털 트윈 기술을 이용해서 시뮬레이션도 하고 환경 관련해서 미세먼지의 어떤 상태를 모니터링할 수 있는 그런 기술도 현재 개발에
level. We have completed the development of such technologies, and with the COVID-19 outbreak last year, we have developed a system where we can track the flow of convicted patients.
조지 사라예바가 얘기했던 코비드 19이 배드 리더십을 아이덴티파이한다 이런 표현이 나오잖아요. 한편으로는 한국에서는 이런 코비드 19을 적절하게 대응함으로 인해서 한국의 인프라의 우수성을 세계 만방에 알리게 되는 계기가 됐다고 볼 수 있습니다. 또한 이런 실증하고 있는 여러 도시들에서는 IoT 솔루션이라든지 여러 가지 개별 솔루션들을 어떻게 결합해서
such as IoT solutions are combined in a way that provides optimal level of services and models for the citizens. And if we can make progress in those areas, the partnership that P4G is creating, I believe Korea can make major contribution. In Korea, smart cities continue to evolve, and ultimately, Korea's smart city models, we hope it could be the global standards for cities around the world. And Korea has achieved a lot of compressed economic growth and developed various models for city development. We hope such models can be widely used around the world, and P4G can be an excellent platform for collaboration with cities around the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, the Senior Research Fellow Cho Dae-yeon, for your presentation. Yes, but it is a relief that developing environmental technologies are helping us to reduce carbon in our cities. So, Mr. Cho Dae-yeon, thank you for introducing city management cases utilizing the cutting-edge ICT technology. Thank you very much once again. Then now the final presentation will share foreign cases in strategic platform intelligent traffic system. Introducing Mark Hendriksen, the chairman of Holland High-Tech, the Netherlands. The chairman Hendriksen will be presenting his presentation on the topic of public-private partnerships for intelligent traffic system. He's now participating in the session online. So the Chairman Hendriksen, would you please start your presentation?
I would like to talk about, indeed, this public-private partnerships. And Holland High-Tech as such is a sort of public-private partnership, because it represents the high-tech industry in the Netherlands, both from companies, knowledge institutes, as well as the government. So we work together. It's the way how we work a lot together in the Netherlands. Now, if we look to the challenges to achieve smart and resilient cities, I see two elements. First of all, it's the digital city, and secondly, it's the resilient city. And if we look to the digital city, the communication, the data is key. It's the complexity, but it also will make it possible for solving the smart city. However, the challenge is so big that no one organization as such can do it all by himself. It requires a whole new architecture where everybody should be involved. And that relies to the presentation of George, where it is maybe a typical European way of solving things. The Netherlands has a long history in public-private partnership for these complex challenges, and we started early in that. And one of the examples I would like to present to you is the example of the project called SPITS, which stands for Strategic Platform for Intelligent Transport Systems. And the important element of this presentation of this project was the fact that it was the whole value chain that was involved in this project. It was companies producing computer chips, companies producing consumer goods like cars or bicycles, companies producing trucks, the companies that build the infrastructure, also the companies that control the infrastructure, and not only on the company side, but also the research institutes of the technical universities in the Netherlands, and also the Applied Scientific Research Institute in the Netherlands. All parties work together to make this one big project. It was co-funded by the government. About 1/3 or a bit less than 1/3 was funded by the government. Now, what were the goals to achieve in this SPITS project? The goal was to build the next, but also upgradable generation of onboard units that are open and easily configurable for OEM-specific requirements. OEM stands for Original Equipment Manufacturers. Those are the manufacturers of cars, trucks, and buses, and they usually want to keep the inboard software for themselves, which is a prime factor. So you need to have an open system that is able to communicate with all kinds of vehicles, and it should also be upgradable because you need next generation vehicles to be coupled to the system. Therefore, it's also important to adapt the existing roadside units to support this cooperative technology and to supply local information to all the traffic involved. We saw a picture in the presentation of Mr. Cho of all these lines of communication, and that is in essence indeed what we are talking about. Then you need also to build a next generation of back offices that are able to complete all the information cycles and circles between all the parties involved, and not only on one moment in time, but in the future as well. Therefore, this upgradable and open source system. And in essence, our aim was to create a new innovation ecosystem by coupling all these parties that in the past did not have an experience of working together because they are different sectors. The picture you see on the right hand is a stretch of a motorway which had been prepared for this project with all sensors and cameras and digital elements that were necessary. And the cars that you see are all exactly spaced between each other, working, driving autonomously, making use of this system. So this is a whole stretch, a large amount of vehicles interlinked to each other and having a sort of keeping distance to each other, autonomously steered by this project. And that was the first time that we were able to do this, and it was a great success. It worked very well. What are lessons that we have learned in this project? Because it's now on the way already for several years. Well, first of all, speed of data transmission is key. And especially for the future, we will need 5G or 6G to be able to cope with the elements and the amount of data and the time that you need to react. This will still be a crucial factor and a difficult factor. Then in the EU, we have very strict rules with regards to privacy regulation, and that makes this a very delicate balance. You would like to, let's say, have more data used, and on the other hand, you have to protect the data for the privacy of the individuals that are driving in these vehicles. So that's a delicate balance, and it makes it more complicated than maybe in some other countries where these regulations are a bit less strict. When we started this project, it was not so much an issue, but it became a huge issue during time, that is data security. How are you sure that not somebody else from maybe another continent is able to tap into your system and take over control? And that's, of course, a very dangerous situation that might occur that you do not want to occur. Like I said before, open software is needed because you need to adapt the software to the different standards of the car manufacturers, the road manufacturers who want to keep this software for themselves. And we were very lucky to make an agreement with the government to have a part of the motorway as a test track record. It was then shut off for a Sunday or a Saturday where we could do all the testing. During the day, it's normal motorway, but it was very helpful to have this built into the project with all the sensors, cameras needed to do all the tests. And what we feel as a big advantage is the fact that we have the whole value chain in the project, but we did not have a very dominant playing, which led to open discussions and also optimal solutions. And I would like to point out to the automotive disruption radar, which is being brought out by Roland Berger several times. This one is from September, where you see that the Netherlands is number one on disruption in automotive industry, but also Korea is on number 3, and Sonia in our presentation had Singapore, that's number 2. So you see these countries are really the countries at the forefront of all these developments. Now, if we go further, then one of the spin-offs of this project is one which we didn't, it was really a spin-off, that the relationship between the companies and the technical universities was intensified hugely, and it led to new projects on green and smart automotive. Now, how do we continue with this project? We have a roadmap. It's a bit like George pointed out in his presentation. It's very important to have a roadmap. Which steps do you take? How do you go further? How do you make use of all the lessons that you have learned? And one of the important aspects now to add to the project is how are we able to detect hazardous situations out of the range of the automated vehicle sensors, because nowadays vehicles do have a lot of sensors, but how to detect them, communicate them with the cars that are involved or the trucks that are involved or let's say could be involved in this hazardous situation with the speed of data which is necessary to be able to prevent something to happen. And that's an enormous challenge. And at the same time, how do we act in such a way with the software that the drivers still feel that they have a comfortable ride and they are not being taken over, of their control is not being taken over too brusquely and without, let's say, giving them an unsafe feeling. Now, especially also the road operators, we saw some pictures in the presentation of Mr. Cho, how this works. They need to control and make use of all these information, improving the traffic safety, efficiency and emissions. We saw in the other presentation also the vehicle on-demand systems. So this can be added to the system. But again, it's a very, very, very complicated project, a very complicated challenge. And like I pointed out before, it's important that all parties involved play a role without one party being too dominant, so that you come to an optimal situation of the architecture. You need a holistic approach to make sure that you will solve this together, a bit in line of the presentation of George. And I would like to finish with a quote which, well, says it all in my view. None of us is as smart as all of us. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good continuation of the project and the summit.
Thank you very much, the Chairman, Mark Hendricks, for sharing with us your information, useful information through the presentation on public-private partnerships for intelligent traffic system. Thank you very much once again. Well, like this, the four offered their opinions on how to build eco-friendly construction in smart cities by each sector. Then now we shall exchange various information with a more open heart. Yes, we'll have a panel discussion. Lastly, we'll have a panel discussion debating how will smart cities respond to the global climate crisis. Before starting, Kim Do-yeon, the professor of Seongjungan University, Republic of Korea, will be taking the chair for this discussion. And I believe that Professor Kim Do-yeon will play a big role in gathering various information from each sector, as he is currently the chairman of the National Smart City Committee. So of course, we'll have our two prior speakers on site to the stage, and those joining us from abroad will participate in the panel discussion online. Then the Professor Kim Do-yeon, so the microphone will be yours from now on. Please start.
Yeah. Thank you for introducing me. Good afternoon and good morning in European colleagues. I am Professor Do-yeon Kim of Seongjungan University. Although we are unable to meet in person due to the COVID-19, I am very honored to serve as a moderator of this online discussion of the P4G Partnership Development Plan. The topic of today's discussion is how will smart cities respond to the climate change crisis. In other words, smart city must be a way of climate positive. I would like to thank each member of distinguished panels and their excellent presentations on topic including the governance and public and private partnership, mobility, city planning and architecture, and platform. I will first ask questions to each speaker, followed by a Q&A session. The audience attending and attending the session online will have an opportunity to ask questions to experts from the industry, the academia, and research communities. The question will be begin in order of the presentations. So the first question is for Mr. George Sarabia. 조지 사라비아 씨에게 먼저 질문을 하도록 하겠습니다.
Let me first ask a question to George Sarabia. You've mentioned the leadership paradigm shift toward the holacracy and COVID-19. In what way both the model and roadmap will support the necessary economic recovery after the pandemic? Especially, how can they support economic growth? Can you say that?
Thank you first, and I have to mention this. Thank you for mentioning the economic recovery instead of economic growth. And I mean that because before of the pandemic, the world was obsessed with economic growth. Many countries, actually, for the last decade, they have grown more than 3% every year. So every year it's 3% and 3%. Yet in countries like the US, just to mention the world's largest economy, now the Americans' buyer power have been stagnated for 40 years. So where is this economic growth taking us? Where is it driving us? Well, you could say that the 62 world richest people have registered in the same time period a wealth growth of 45%. But it's also true that the 10% richest in the world are also responsible for almost half of the planet's carbon footprint. So the result after this is not only about distribution of wealth, actually, is that governments are becoming discredited because governments play the role that everything is fine, we are growing economically, but people don't feel. So following the usual trends, I would not focus so much on how the economy will grow, because the economy will grow when life returns to normality. We had bad years and during the pandemic, so naturally now everything will grow, and the most of the politicians will feel just fine because everything is back to normal or growing back to normal. But the problem is the economic growth will diverge the focus and not solve the existing problem. We do have a problem in the buyer power that will continue to stagnate. Inequalities will be worsened, and the planet will continue to be a deferred priority, while governments mistakenly feel that they are doing well. So what is exactly our post-COVID mission? In effect, is recovering the economic model from being fair, all-inclusive, and sustainable. And let me give you one basic example of all-inclusive. Usually, we have the concept of beneficiaries. Every business model, every single policy-making process always focus on the beneficiaries. We learn to start thinking from the beneficiaries, the users, the personas or customers, depending on the perspective. But beneficiaries are the oil of the economy and the governance. But have you ever thought about what happens to oil? In fact, it gets burned, consumed, and disappears. And why is that? Because the existing economic model is based on extraction, on consumers, others' wealth to thrive. It's a transaction base, it's moving wealth and not creating wealth. To create wealth, you need to stop focus on extraction and start focus on engagement and engaging everyone in the value creation. And that's the economy we need to recover. And that's exactly what it should be our mission. Creation means stop focus on beneficiaries and focus on including everyone into the game. I had a friend that always said that if you are not in the table of the negotiations, you're probably on the menu. And that's exactly, if you want an all-inclusive, sustainable growth economic paradigm, then you need to make it all on the table of negotiations, because only by giving value, only by adding value, you will benefit from the value created.
예, 감사합니다. 이 코비드-19
Thank you very much.
코비드-19과 스마트 시티에서 우리는
Between COVID-19 and smart cities, we all agree that we need new governance, and as an alternative, the concept of holacracy has been proposed, and Vice President George Saraiva, thank you very much. Next, we are going to talk about hydrogen.
Today's presentation, Mr. Park Chul introduced a lot of details that Hyundai Motor Company is working on. My question is, the hydrogen-based energy, especially the future eco-friendly car, are they really eco-friendly car? Are they going to help us in combating against climate crisis? And do you believe that it's sufficient enough? Can you elaborate, please? Thank you for your question. In case of the hydrogen-based eco-friendly car, people might not have sufficient idea. In case of the fossil fuel-based car, unlike internal combustion locomotive that use gasoline or diesel as raw material, hydrogen electric vehicles fill hydrogen in the tank and then combine with the oxygens in the air to generate electricity. So once again, let me repeat. The emissions that comes from the hydrogen linking with the oxygens are water. Therefore, it's extremely eco-friendly. I'll give another example. We talked about cargo truck. And in case of the diesel car, efficiency is great and also the horsepower is great. Therefore, most of the time, the cargo trucks use diesel. However, compared to the passenger vehicle, cargo trucks that uses diesel car, they emit carbon emission more than 40 times. Therefore, if we change into hydrogen truck, definitely we can reduce carbon emissions. And more than 30% of the CO2 emissions can be reduced. That's a result of our study. And also, I mentioned that we use oxygens that are in the atmosphere, but in the process of collecting the oxygen, we have three-tier system, and more than 90% of the fine dust can be reduced, which means that we emit water, we get rid of the fine dust. Therefore, this is great, and by providing hydrogen truck, it has an excellent air purification ability.
For hydrogen vehicles, to help us respond to climate change and to resolve CO2 problems, I thank you very much. And I believe hydrogen vehicle will be clearly playing a very important role in our future. Now, we are going to invite senior researcher Jo Dae-yeon from Kaya. Smart cities. Do you think smart cities can play a proper role in responding to the climate change crisis? Well, abstractly, we believe that is the case, and smart cities in a high level will definitely help us respond to the climate crisis. But to be specific, what kind of role smart cities can play in dealing with the climate change? Thank you very much for the question. Before we have this kind of discussion, there is a need for scientific and objective decision. Climate change is a global crisis, and greenhouse gas emissions and other problems are caused by global climate change. Well, I heard that cities only cover 2% of the Earth's surface, but cities emit more than 70% of CO2 and also consume 80% of the energy in the world. In responding to the climate change, I think cities have to play a very critical role in dealing with the challenges. Can the cities continue to live or function as they have
Are they sustainable? Well, when it comes to energy consumption and CO2 emissions in the urban environment, we have to remember that buildings and transportations have been the major source of CO2 emission. And in transportation, since the vehicles used currently rely on fossil fuel, we have to find a way to reduce such CO2 emission by utilizing electric vehicles or non-powered mobilities. By expanding public transportation, we can reduce the CO2 emission by passenger vehicles. And the second point I would like to make is that in the case of buildings, there is a variety of stakes at play here. There are residential buildings and commercial buildings, and sometimes the buildings can be owned by public institutions or private companies. In fact, private industry have to volunteer and cooperate with CO2 reduction, and if they don't cooperate, it would be very difficult to reduce CO2 emission. Based on such phenomena, when it comes to responding to climate change, we talk about zero waste and net zero emission. The most important thing is to create cities that can circulate by itself. There are three important issues here. First is to have the governments and policies consistently so we can create sustainable urban environment, and smart cities need such policy support. Second, it's the technology issues. If we use advanced technologies, for example, big data technologies, 90% of the big data I heard is just the trash. In order to store such huge amount of data, we would need data centers, which would inevitably consume a lot of energy. So we have to create an efficient way of storing and managing data, and choosing the right technology would be most critical. Third issue here is the government or the private sector alone cannot do this alone. The voluntary participation of citizens to reduce waste and to reduce energy consumption would be most vital. So we need to create a community environment to make this happen. And last but not least, climate change is a global phenomenon and must be resolved at a global level. So there should be effective cooperation and partnership between cities and between international organizations, and P4G forums like that would be playing a very important role. And if we can handle these issues correctly, I think we'll definitely have a better Earth.
Smart cities, in order to combat climate crisis, it has a huge meaning as a future cities, and thank you for sharing the case. In building cities itself, there are physical things, but also soft things, and also the role of the government, role of the citizens, and international cooperation. In light of that, the future, the implementations of the smart cities, we need to connect that with the climate crisis. Thank you for your comment.
I have asked all the questions that I have prepared for the panelists, and I have gotten wonderful answers from our panelists.
Actually, he looked over the panel discussion. Honestly, because I'm not the expert in this field, I had a little difficulties fully comprehending the environmental technologies while listening to the Q&A session. And I think the topic can be difficult to ordinary people. However, by all means, it is extremely encouraging seeing that the cutting-edge technology can sufficiently play its role in decreasing carbon in our daily lives. Thank you very much for your information. Currently, those who registered to participate online in advance is looking over the city session through Zoom. It must be a little late to greet you. Are there any questions? Would you please raise your hand? Oh, yes. Juman Kim? So would you please just introduce yourself briefly and choose the speakers you would like to give your question?
Okay. Hello, my name is Juman Kim, the graduate student of Songyungan University. I have a question to Mr. Mark Hendriksen. The question is that Mark Hendriksen explained that speech was the complete value chain, involved 3 technical universities and applied scientific research institute, and that green and smart automotive was created through relationship between companies and technical universities. Could you explain that process or the case of public and private partnership for speech?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm very happy to do so. It is indeed the fact that the Netherlands has a very long history in public-private partnerships. That has to do with the fact that we had to fight against the waters, both coming from the sea as well as coming from the rivers over centuries and centuries, which led to a culture of cooperation, especially also between universities or knowledge institutes in general and companies to join forces and come up with solutions. Usually what happens is that the national government then comes up with extra funding if universities and companies work together in a project. And the essential necessity in these kind of cooperation is the fact that all parties are being treated equally. Usually that is done by giving the participants in a project involved a seat in a steering group, and under the steering group you have different projects that are being followed by the steering group, and you can adjust when necessary. So all the parties that are involved, both companies and universities, decide together, and for that sense it is very important that no party has, let's say, a dominant position and is trying to push through decisions, because then in the end it will not work. But we have a history of doing so over many years. It sometimes has a disadvantage, but in this case for very complex problems it is an advantage, because in the end you come up with the most optimal solution for the whole system instead in sub-optimizing for subsystems. So that is in essence how it works together.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your kind response. So now shall we take the second question? So please raise your hand. We'll help you to turn on the microphone. Yes. So now, thank you very much for raising your hand. Yes. So would you please introduce yourself briefly first?
Yeah. This is Chris Lee from InnoDev. I'm in charge of smart city business of the company. Sonia, today, very excellent session. Appreciate today. Sonia, you mentioned and emphasized the landscape as a way to design resilient cities. Especially the Seoul Valley project enabled the landscape to function as a heat migrators, shading, and pollution filters. By the way, what do you think should we consider more to design Seoul city as a resilient city compared to the other cities? Please.
So this question is for Sonia.
That's right.
So Sonia, would you please ask them? Yep, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think, Seoul has a great opportunity. You're already around Seoul has loads of greenery. You have an opportunity, of course, to make a more green city. And when we design, we do figure out how can this green help us in the situation where we are now. Seoul has similar challenges as many larger cities, like congestion, pollution, heat islands, and so on. And all of these issues can actually be solved by adding nature and landscapes to the cities. We can also look into, for example, in this project, Seoul Valley project, we have looked into how that the buildings are being shaped to optimize shade. So in the warm summers, we still allow people to actually be outside. By using all of the nature, we can filtrate the air So also the pollution coming from the congestion and the cars, to actually give more people access and to create a better environment at a human level, meaning at streetscapes or at the street level. So people, they are able to move around the city without feeling bad or without wearing a mask, hopefully when the pandemic might be over. And in that, I think this, looking at the climate, looking at what we have as natural resources and use those smart, that is an opportunity you definitely have in Seoul and Korea as a whole.
Thank you very much, Sonia, for your reply. I live in Seoul City, and I will look forward to seeing the better Seoul where we coexist with nature. And sorry about the time. We have heard of the answer of the last question. And our online audience was with us for quite a long time. So did you have a good time? Did you have a good time? If it was time well spent, please make a circle over your head. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. So why don't you give a big hand for our panels and also speakers and all online participants. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank all of our panelists for sincerely responding. And we have listened to our online audience's questions. And actually, I'm curious as to how the chairman, the Professor Kim Do-yeon, thought of it. Please wrap up the panel discussion.
예, 모두 오랜 시간.
Thank you very much for your participation. It has been a long but insightful panel discussion. Cities are threatening the mankind, and the cause of climate change and the consumption of fossil fuel, CO2 emission. Cities are largely blamed for this kind of woes. But cities are symbols of human civilization and human history and culture. And cities also symbolize and represent all the things that humanity have achieved so far. We have always gathered our wisdom and technologies together to resolve the challenges of our times. The core values of smart cities would be to find ways for the mankind to get together, gather their wisdom and technology together to resolve the challenges that the humanity faces.
우리는 이 시대가 지향해야 되는 가장 대표적인 문제점인 기후
We
변화에
believe
대한
that climate change is the biggest challenge that faces the mankind, and we need to work together to resolve this challenge. Smart cities can sustain our growth and help us evolve our culture and civilization.
이런 노력을 통해서
Through such
다음
efforts,
세대를 위한 좋은
we
도시,
can create a better city for the future generation and create an infrastructure where our future generations can be
여러분들의 중요한 말씀을
happy with.
다섯 분의 담론은
So the five panelists have shared their wisdom together as to what we need to do right now for the future generations.
그리고 오늘 참석하신 청중 여러분들도
And the
이러한
audience who have joined us today, they have asked the questions and we have sought answers together. Such process is the process of finding solutions to our challenges, and through collective intelligence we need to find the breakthrough that will help us overcome carbon neutrality. In 2021 we have gathered in the city of Seoul to talk about ways to promote carbon neutrality. Korea has gone through rapid urbanization and advanced technologies. Over the 10 years, through smart city projects and implementation, we have accumulated some technologies and knowledge, and we will leverage that experience with other cities to create a better future for all of us.
앞으로
The meetings
지속되어서
that
대한민국을
we
중심으로
have
모든
will
나라들이 함께
help us
참여해서
to
인류의 최대의
promote partnership
기후변화를
around the world so that we can
탄소
tackle
중립으로 앞으로 더
the
좋은
biggest
미래를
challenge of the
만들기 위해서
humanity
함께
through
노력하는 계기가
carbon
되기를
neutrality.
희망합니다. 오늘 모든 분들의 참여 감사드리고
Thank you
다시
very
한번
much for
우리
all
모두를
of your
위해서
participation.
감사의
And once
말씀을
again,
드립니다.
I would like to thank on
오늘
behalf of all the
패널 토론을
participants.
마치도록 하겠습니다.
I would like to
모두
now
감사드립니다.
conclude today's panel discussion. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much, Professor Kim Do-yeon, to lead the panel discussion. Thank you very much once again. The City Thematic Session of the 2021 P4G Seoul Summit, while discussing with you for 2.5 hours, I dreamed of the green future made, not alone, but together with everyone. It occurred to me that as smart cities facing green recovery, carbon neutral society, and climate crisis response is not too far away. In South Korea, we can't see the sky due to the fine dust, and the time when the 4 seasons were distinct is becoming a blurry. Efforts for the fading planet are most definitely needed. The Earth will not return its clear skies unless cities change. I hope everyone join finding answers in the city for a tomorrow where we can live happily together and restore the blue planet. I will start by carrying a tumbler. Thank you very much. Until now, my name is Sori Moon. 감사합니다.